So without any further ado, we will get started on our presentation of the SmartPort maturity framework. SmartPort maturity framework, to start with, why did we build this? And the short introduction is that, well, if we look at the way different industries are going, so at AMS, our competence center is actually quite focused on several B2B industries, and what we see is that there's an increase of an increasing impact of open platform business models. And this slide, well, I think all of the company names that are on here, at least in the bottom row, are quite familiar to us. And what's quite striking in this list, and this is the top 5, and actually if you go to the top 20, you can even see that 10 out of those top 20 largest companies in terms of market capitalization are all fueled by an open platform business model. And none of them had such an open platform business model before, because you see a couple of those companies coming back, such as Microsoft, which was in all of these rankings. But what is really striking at the size of the icons that you see here for these different brands, for these different companies, is actually in real proportions. And what's quite striking is that if you look now at the numbers, the number 4 is actually larger than the number 1 in 1999. So in 1999, that was just before the dot-com bubble. So when, let's say the first platform companies were at their height, we see still that now Alphabet, the mother company of the mother holding above Google and some other companies, is as a 4th company in this list, even quite a bit larger than the first one at the just before the dot-com bubble. So either we are just before the next bubble again, or there must be something to this power of open platforms. And when we look at B2B industries, we also see a rise, especially under the Industry 4.0, Logistics 4.0, Ports 4.0, these numbers. We see that there's also an increasing attention and interest, at least, in taking up some of these platform business models. But not in all industries, it's equally easy to do so. And we see that actually for smart ports specifically, where our project SPEED is oriented at, so SPEED stands for Smart Ports Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Development. And what we aim to do is really work on the framework conditions for innovation, so that there can be an ecosystem to stimulate the growth of a smart ports market. And this market will no doubt be driven by digital platforms, where all sorts of applications can run on top, and in an interoperable way to connect data streams and data points within and between ports. But if you look at it, this evolution towards smart ports is really a story of different forces and different speeds, you could say. So on the one hand, there's the technological potential, which we just saw. But on the other hand, there's also the social change capacity. So the technological potential, there we see that the speed of new development is really going is really very high. But at the same time, if you look at it, the adoption in several B2B industries is not as easy, and especially if we then look at the logistics and transportation industry, we see that it's actually somewhat, well, towards the rear of this peloton in terms of adopting these digital technologies, which is well, a shame, because we definitely see a big potential both in the industry and in our region. And so this is a visual depiction a little bit of the potential for digitization in our industry. What's this? This is actually the trade flows within Europe, and especially you can see that the region, the Hamburg-Le Havre region, let's say, is a real hotspot within Europe, with very intricate deep sea, short sea, and hinterland traffic flows, which is, to quote Frank Sinatra on it, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And that's really true for smart ports. So this intricate system of hinterland and sea connections is the ideal testing ground for all sorts of smart port solutions. We also know that within this area, there is a really high density of pockets of IoT, data science, blockchain, and other type of knowledge, which is really interesting for the for smart port applications. And we also know that if you look at the advantages of some of these technologies that I've just mentioned, the main advantage there is about connecting and integrating. And if your business is by definition a chain, then this advantage of integration and a connection should be really high. So therefore we are struck a little bit with on the one hand, an industry where the potential for these new technologies is really high, but we see that the adoption is going rather slow. And then you can have several factors determining why this adoption is going rather slow and how we can accelerate it. One of the big observations is that if you look at what is the innovation impulse within the industry, well, compared to other industries, it is rather low. So that's a first observation which cannot be ignored. So if you look at most of the innovation towards logistics and the innovative players towards smart port applications, you see that most of that innovation is actually coming from players outside of the traditional industry. To mention a couple, so we also did a search, for instance, of the top 50 employer brands, and there you see that the only one appearing there is Amazon. But you also see it in terms of the innovators. Amazon is definitely one of them. Alibaba, they are really investing a lot, and by a lot, it's incomparable to even the top players within the industry in innovation, in supply chain integration, and so on. So taking this observation, and then if you look at, okay, what are some potential factors that determine that can help us out to accelerate the growth of the smart ports market from within? A really important one, and that seems to be lacking, is action capacity. So action capacity, that actually means that companies, people are not able to adapt, to prepare for a newer reality if they don't know what this reality will consist of. And that's actually why we built the Smart Port Maturity Framework. And now we have Yassin Boulawazan, who was the leading force behind this framework, who will be presenting the framework. So Yassin, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Wouter. Thank you for the great introduction and giving a good macroeconomic perspective on things. Always interesting to start with. The first slide is a very simple one. What is a smart port for you? I don't know, for the people in chat, or people that have found the chat or have found the button to unmute. Is this like a question where you immediately know what it is about, what a smart port is, or is this something like you feel like there's too many opinions on or not? Can we do like a quick polling? I don't know. Oh, you have reactions. Any reactions from the crowd or someone that's willing to chip in and say what smart ports means for him or her?
You can unmute yourself if you like here. We will also be monitoring the chat if you like to prefer. I'd like to put it there.
We don't hear from far, so if joined up and efficient. Great, thank you for your contribution, Sharon. Yes, I think that's also, it's a very interesting thing that you say about joining things up and doing things together and efficiently. What we've done in our research so far is really take a look at how these things were defined in the past historically, because we know smart ports it's a hip term, it's a trendy term, and in 10 years from now we will be talking about, I don't know, future port, intelligent ports, mega robotic ports. It changes a lot, but I think when we analyzed what they were talking about, we found a lot of running thread. that it is about, improving safety and security, and tomorrow ports. Yes, how come I have not? How could I forget that, Wouter? Indeed, improving port operations, improving hinterland operations, which is, till this day is a very important differentiator for ports, but it's also one of the hardest things to tackle. One that we cannot ignore, which is you see as the fourth icon, the two icons on each other: energy and environment. And lastly, we have people standing there with, carton boxes looking straight past each other. It's and puzzle pieces that are about to interconnect. That's the joined up part of the smart port story, which is very important, and that is the capability of your port community. And we believe that these 5 components together form what a smart port can be. And so we can, yes. So this is the academic, long-winded definition, but I've learned to do icons. I think they communicate better. So, but I think that's basically the gist. I'm not going to turn this into a class, so we can move on to the next slide unless someone has any questions. Then we can always get into that, of course. So what do we find a lot is that, ports are very tricky things, because each port has its contingencies, slightly different. Oh, we don't do this type of cargo, or we have more these types of cargo streams. We have or the economic situation, or even the governmental situation. It's very complex, and so it's hard for a port authority or a port community to just look at its neighbor and just copy paste the solutions. So that makes strategy making also a very difficult exercise. There's also, in general, if you take a step back and look at all the initiatives that are running in Europe so far, there's a lack of a holistic approach. Although many of these projects or initiatives claim that they are the holistic approach or trying to do that, there's still there's a long way to go to try to integrate that well. And lastly, we still find that technology has definitely matured over the last decades, but we still find that mindset rules and disciplines, new mindset rules and disciplines are needed. And in our research, and we've cross-checked this with experts in industry, we found these things to come back several times as strategic challenges that are standing in the way of successful digital transformation projects and roadmaps. If you zoom in deeper, and that brings us to the next slide, you really find out that once you try to overcome these strategic challenges, you start to realize you cannot do this alone. You need the port community to overcome these things. You might have a great initiatives, you might have great projects lined up, but the next guy in line in your project has low IT maturity, or there are no data standards, or there is no data platform that you can all agree on that is a neutral data platform to share your data on. Just getting everyone to commit, getting the business case out there, sometimes even getting the business case out there for things where we're not sure yet if the business case will work. It's just a long list of challenges that you cannot simply overcome by doing this alone, or following a lone wolf strategy in a port and port logistics context. I'm not going to get into too much of these barriers. I think it's just to give you an idea of why we need to do this together. Then we can move on to the next slide. So what is for us the smart port maturity model? We looked at research from, I think, the 1980s until 2020. All academic research, of course, and a lot of front running, or a lot of famous papers from practice that we also included in the study. And we looked at how can we categorize all these successful projects? What can we learn from ports like Rotterdam, Singapore, which have invested quite significantly more than a small port like Poole? And what can a small port like Poole just do the right things from the first time to increase its maturity significantly? And the outcome of that is this model. Now, I will explain this model later, but I can tell you just what I've said in the beginning, that what a smart port for us is, it's about safety and security, port operations, synchromodality, which is about the hinterland, energy and environment and capability. Now, the amount of advancedness, and we express that through data integration. The higher your data is integrated with in your organization, with your partners, with your competitors, with your port communities, the higher your maturity will be individually, but also in effect, the higher the maturity of your port community will be because of this. And I think now I can give the word to Karel, because we met in Best, as I've met also the IT manager of North Sea Ports, and we involved them in, Rick has been involved also in some of the initial expert workshops that we have done, where we really had honest conversations with IT leaders from different ports and thinking, okay, how can we try to, get something off the ground, right? and try to do it effectively as possible. So it inspired Rick a lot, and he has done some interesting things. So that's why I'm giving the word now to Karel.
Yeah, thank you, Yassine, for this introduction and interesting insights. I will try to share my screen now. So is this visible for everybody? Yeah, okay. Okay, great. So in the following 10 minutes, I would like to share with you all some of our experience with this smart port maturity model. But before that, I would like to start with a short introduction of North Sea Port itself, who we are and what we do. So North Sea Port is quite a newcomer to the ranks of the European ports. It's the youngest port in Europe, you could say, because the port was born on the 1st of January in 2018. And that was as a result of the merger between Zeeland Seaport, those are the ports of Terneuzen and Flushing in the Netherlands, and the Port of Ghent in Belgium. At that time, that was the largest cross-border merger between European ports ever. So North Sea Port is the second cross-border fusion port in Europe. The first one was formed by the Danish Copenhagen and Malmö in Sweden. So yeah, we can say that's quite unique, and that North Sea Port is unique in that way. Traditionally, if we look at the performance of a port, that's usually measured by metrics such as gross weight tonnages and TEUs. If we look at those metrics, we can say as North Sea Port that we are in the top 10 in Europe. To be specifically in place 8, we have about 64 million seaborne traffic in 2020. But okay, these are the traditional metrics. What we see now is that the switch towards other metrics are getting more important. For example, a metric like the ability of a port being visible as a node in the global supply chain to enhance a better performance in the entire chain, but also metrics regarding sustainability and so on. And that's exactly the point where the uniqueness of our port stops, because just as many other port authorities around the world and members of different port communities, we face the same challenges in these turbulent times. My name is Karel Sai, and I would like to share with you how North Sea Port wants to tackle these challenges. We want to do it with our community, and where also the smart port maturity model proved its value in this journey so far. So I pointed it out already, but to give you the context, yeah, we're living in a fast-moving, turbulent world, and that world is rapidly changing. Digital transformation and data as part of that are drivers and the necessity for future growth. It's all over the place. The port and the maritime sector, just as many other sectors, is in need to transform itself. to get to a higher level of maturity on the scale of smart ports, you could say. So to make sure that our North Sea Port community embarks on this journey, our ambition is to help our customers and the broader community in this journey and to understand their needs. You could call that the customer intimacy. We also want to be a connector. We are definitely aware of the fact that we don't have all the answers and all the knowledge in-house, and we strongly believe in the power of the ecosystem around us. These ambitions will also be an important part of our new business strategy for the next 5 years, which is currently in development. But okay, now feet on the ground, because yeah, these are all beautiful ambitions, but where and how do we need to start? At North Sea Port, we believe in the fact that we need to start with understanding, because you can't transform something you don't understand. And that's exactly the point where the Smart Port Maturity Model came into the picture. So we used the model as a framework in different settings and with different stakeholders so far. To give you an idea, we used it internally for our yearly budgeting rounds of our IT projects and programs, but we also used it externally for interviews with the logistics sector in Zeeland, that's the South Province in the Netherlands, and some of our customers in Ghent. And what we saw was that the Smart Port Maturity Model served as a great framework for these analysis and creative thinking processes. Now, I would like to share with you some of those results from these examples. So the first example, as I mentioned before, was the application of the framework internally. So we used the framework to map upon different trends and also possible applications regarding those trends at North Sea Port. We used an online collaboration tool called Miro together with a group of colleagues and definitely managers who are in charge of those budgeting. And based on this input, we were able to have a better focus and an idea of the needs, concrete needs and ambitions in the organization regarding digital transformation projects. It gave also an idea of where we position ourselves, looking at the applications we need at that time, and also relating the different levels of the Smart Port Maturity Model. So that was the first example. If we look at the second one, that had a slightly more external focus, so to say, in the logistics sector in Zeeland. And for this exercise, we did some little adjustments to the framework itself, because yeah, we focused it more on the logistics itself and not on the broader port topic. So we changed some terminology to make it more specific. Regarding the process itself, so based on a couple of theses, we gathered thoughts, goals, and bottlenecks regarding those theses and map them upon the model. A thesis could be, for example, human competences are a key necessity to survive in the logistics system of tomorrow. All the bottlenecks and thoughts and goals that were mentioned regarding that thesis were plotted on this model, and due to that, we were able to cluster these individual elements findings on a higher level. And we will use those insights for the development of a roadmap to support the logistics sector in Zeeland in this transition. Yeah, what we saw in this exercise was the fact that yeah, around the table, the participants, there were bigger companies like Katoen Natie in Belgium, but also smaller SMEs around the table. But for each one of those, the framework was very applicable and generic in use. So that was definitely a big plus. So I'd like to end with some strengths and possible improvements based upon our experiences. If we look at the strengths of the model, yeah, we can say that the Smart Port Maturity Model is very recognizable, and not only for us as a port authority, but also for a wide range of stakeholders in the whole port community. Secondly, it's very generic, and it could be a perfect foundation for a roadmap. If we look at the improvements, we saw that yeah, there's a need to measure progress. If you do a survey at one time, you want to measure yourself the progress in the form of a periodic survey. And regarding that, also the need of benchmarking yourself within the community, but also beyond the borders of that community, would be a big improvement. But I can imagine that Yassine will elaborate a bit more on that later on in this session. So, okay, that was it for me. I would like to thank you for your time, but I would also like to end this presentation with a call to you all in this webinar, because if you have some experience.
Karel, you're
was muted, I guess. Hello?
Yes, for the last slide you were.
Okay, do you hear me now? Yeah, okay. And was the end slide clear, or?
Well, I think we missed your last message to go with it, Karel.
Okay. I will repeat that one. So it was a call to you all in this webinar. If you could exchange some knowledge about community building as itself, sharing some knowledge on that, then we are very happy to talk about it, or to exchange that knowledge together.
Thank you, Karel.
Great.
So here we'd like to open the floor up to all of you, indeed. So I think Karel has made a really good call. We see it in North Sea Port, and we see it in other ports as well, that there's an increasing focus on community building. That port authorities are switching from just being landlords towards also, let's say, custodians of the smart port progress and community building. Are there certain questions, problems that you have, challenges that you have at your port that you'd like to share here with us? Perhaps there's some of Karel's experience or from the audience that can help you. Then you can unmute yourself, or you can post them in the chat. And after we have this discussion, we will have a second case, which is about Port of Moerdijk, who also used the model, whereas Karel and Rick at Moerdijk have used the model in two ways. So the first one was about spotting potential applications to focus investments, to focus development efforts on. The other one was rather in terms of trend and scenario watching. Okay, thanks for the comment, Sharon. And in the Moerdijk case, we will also be looking at how they used it really to prioritize their development efforts together with their community. So it was not just the Port Authority, but just like in the second session with North Sea Port, also with their tenants, with their port stakeholders, looking at, okay, what are your greatest needs for further smart port development? From Sharon, we got a comment in that the model seems to provide real clarity in internal mapping, and then used indeed for engagement with the wider port community. So that's indeed something we'll see in the Moerdijk port case. Any other questions, also suggestions or remarks that you have up until now? You can post them either in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Perhaps this is also a good time before, because at the end we may have people leaving. What we always try to do with these kinds of sessions is also take a picture of everyone who was in there. So could we ask you to turn on your cameras, please? You can, of course, mute your background, change your background still, if you like. So hi, Johan. We already had Martin in. We also see Rick, who was actually Karel's compagnon de route. here. Okay, so we even have people here visually now from Brazil. I was hoping that we could see the weather there, Yuri, but no windows, so no chance to get the weather. Hi, Mark. Nice to see you.
Yes. Yeah. Julia as well. But I think not everyone has I assume not everyone has a camera in their laptop or the device.
Okay, so
it's cold in Brazil. Okay. Interesting to know. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be doing a short countdown so that you can tidy up and get into a good pose. So we will count from 3 and then.
Yes, put your best smile.
Okay, so here it goes. So 3, 2, 1, and then we say cheese, right? Cheese. Okay. Thank you all for this. Now we will continue with the content of today. So in the meanwhile, I see there's one more
yes
in the chat from Julia. So Julia is asking here for you. This is one for you, Carl. So that you'd be interested to know how long a small port would survive without engaging in smart port thinking. So can they just bury their head in the ground and think that it will just blow over? What's your take on this?
I don't think that's an option even for the smallest port in the world, so to say. So every port in the world has to think about getting smarter. But that's also the value of the smart port maturity model, that you can you can see yourself in that level of maturity. So not every port wants to be at this moment in the highest scale of maturity. It's fittable for each kind of port, for each port his ambitions. Maybe it's also an ambition to just stay in level 3 or level 4 and just never reach that highest level. But I think it's no option to not getting smarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Carl. And that's also one of the things we'll emphasize in the next case study, where actually Port of Moerdijk used this also to set ambitious but realistic goals as to where they wanted to end up in each of these dimensions. And then we could even translate it into which would be then the priority smart port applications. We've developed a list of 22 application families, so big families of application types that correspond with the different maturity levels and dimensions. Then a second comeback question from Julia. So, and are there any ports already out of business, meaning that they haven't started to adopt this thinking? If so, they would be a good example of how not to get involved.
Luckily, they're usually not. They're usually government funded. So. But I don't think we have at the moment, we have concrete numbers to answer that question, to be honest. It's an interesting question. I think the question is rather, where is the, where are the higher or the volumes, one thing, and also value adding volumes going to. And I don't think the answer is they're going to small ports, they're not engaging in smart thinking. If you have, especially if you're a big e-commerce company, which there are many now due to COVID, what they care about is visibility, ensuring that everything is, from start to finish, visible internally and externally. So engaging with a port that doesn't offer that, I might already sense that they'll probably not be open to do business with them. But interesting question to, to gather concrete numbers on that and get back to you on that as well. If it's okay, Wouter, I will start presenting again. We have also had an interesting question from Remo. How do you open the debate with a port? What was the hook? I think that's an interesting question. In our case, the Port of Moerdijk case, I hope you can see my full screen. You're seeing everything well. We we found actually a port community that already had a good informal relationship with each other. There was already some ground and some basis of engagement. And I think that's also what we also find in all port communities that are ranking quite high on these maturity scales, is that they have connections with, they have ways to stay in touch, stay in contact. There are intermediary organizations that either drive innovation or just try to get people's voices heard. These are all great ways to get to that port community and start talking about, okay, let's talk about digital transformation. Now, in this case, the Port of Moerdijk, the fourth biggest port of the Netherlands. They have over 400 companies in logistics and chemicals. And here you can see some pictures of the group. We focus specifically on container cargo. So why did we do that? It was interesting because there are so many companies. We had to make a choice to have some scope, and so we can guide the conversations and the future projects in the right direction, so that we don't are all over the map. But we also have a very we took at least one person from each chain, but of course in a bigger port community, so let's say for example Port of Antwerp, you would have representatives of each chain almost that you need in that meeting, because there are so many freight forwarders, so many hinterland transporters, and you need to have some way of a somewhat scalable way to engage them in a healthy way. So yeah, and what we did is actually I had a conversation with each and one of them, just talking about where is your company now, what are your ambitions, and what are you expecting from your port community as part of that ambition, because they were very good at defining for themselves what they wanted to do, but when it was about what their expectations were towards their port community, it was a bit unclear. But that's the interesting part. Their ambitions were very dependent on their port community to do certain things, to share data, to cooperate in new business models, to cooperate in new business process changes. So it was very interesting to get them to see that, and also then to think together, where do we want to go as a port? And so just as last time I've presented this, now usually in their case, it wasn't an empty model, it was a filled-in model. So with all kinds of examples, concrete examples of what it means to be at level 1 for a certain domain, for a certain component. You've already seen those 5 components already. Safety and security, port operations, synchromodality, which is about hinterland connections, energy, environment, and capability. And then for each of those components and domains, as we call them, we have levels that we define, being silo focused, being actually a port that port community and port actors that are taking the step to get out of those silos, which is very hard, exceptionally hard even, I would say, and actually try to, once you get out of those silos, try to set up working cooperations, and then you can have your digital applications supporting that. But usually it's very supply chain oriented, directed around some high volume chains, and then the next step in that is to just see the port as a place of not just one supply chain, but a place where many supply chains come together and try to share data not only with your direct partners, but with also competitors in a safe and secure way, of course. And that's where you get into level 4. And at the highest level, it's about not just thinking about optimizing your ports, but also optimizing at an interport level. I will not get into details too much because it is a bit sensitive information, of course. But what I can say is that you have the current phase, which is what the group agreed on, was this is where we stand as a port community. And it was for many things. They found that, okay, we as a community are doing some of these things. We are starting up some projects. It is somewhat fragmented, but we also see the need of integrating things. but it is a trajectory that we have started. But what was interesting was how they defined their ambitions. And as Carlos also said, not everyone has the ambition to score 5 out of 5 for everything. That doesn't always make sense either. Huh? But together for each aspect. So for example, for safety and security, they agreed as a group, we actually need a much higher level of safety and security, not only about who's entering the port premises, but also how we deal with port-wide cybersecurity, because there are many sensitive goods there, etc. And we need to do it in a way that is non-intrusive as well. So there are many applications in that domain. And then as part of this exercise of saying where you are as a port community and where you want to be, there's a gap, of course. And then it's about, that's what we did at the end of that session, was develop a roadmap to get from the as is to the to be state of your port community. And I think with that, I have to end. As I've said in the beginning, I cannot give away too much details because of the sensitive nature of this data. And as a neutral research party, we really believe in spreading the knowledge that this is useful. This can be useful for your port community. And so that's why we're giving you a sneak peek, of course. So with that, I think I've given my last slide on this, Wouter, right? Yes, you're on mute.
I think that after a year and a half of COVID, we'd finally realized when we were on mute. Most heard sentence probably in meetings since then. No, but indeed. So here the idea is, Yassin, thanks a lot for presenting also the case of Moerdijk, which was to some extent similar with that second case, that first case, sorry, of North Sea Port. But then as with some additions still, so indeed about really making very explicit what the ambition levels are, because that's also one of the things we notice. On the one hand, what this model does is, going past the confusion and fragmentation of smart ports, because if you ask 10 people what a smart port means, you get 12 different definitions. That's to start with. So it's getting some alignment about what it means for us, and also where we want to get. It was getting, because in the comments I've already responded to Raymond on this question, that they used it really to get the ambitions on the table, to get those what are your current problems that you have right now, because if we look at where most of the efforts are going right now, it's not in really in going for really advanced applications with artificial intelligence or blockchain, but it's just about getting basic facts of data quality and visibility right. And just bringing those things on the table was already quite interesting for the group, because that's where the first quick wins were realized, really. So just bringing those things on the table, some actual collaborations already started there. And then getting also alignment about where each actor wanted to go, and where most of the actors together wanted to go, really helped a lot in then prioritizing which applications that the Port Authority should invest in to enable, let's say, all of their tenants. So Karel talked in the beginning about customer intimacy, and that's really what you get from an exercise like this. So it really helped the Port Authority a lot in figuring out where, in which domains they could help their tenants with to increase their service level and to increase overall performance effectiveness of the port. And just in doing so, again, it has this positive feedback loop. It also then again increases the willingness to go for new collaborative projects, to share more data with each other, because these are some of the bottlenecks that we always see. It's not knowing where to go, not being willing to share data, because we think if we hang on to the data ourselves and protect it, somehow it's going to be more valuable, which is of course nonsense. And so getting people to that level where they want to share data That's something that also comes out of this maturity framework. So yeah, before we go to the Smart Port Barometer, perhaps one last round of opening it up. If you have any more questions, please either post them in the chat or unmute yourself. And in the meanwhile, as we give you some time to give to pose your questions. Let's introduce the Smart Port Barometer. So based on the Smart Port maturity model, as Karel said before, one of the points of improvement is that it's a really useful exercise to get people on the same page, to level the playing field and to start thinking about where you should all go. But then it would be really good if we could also monitor progress. And that's actually, we've taken heed to Karel's question there. And we've developed a Smart Port Barometer. The Smart Port Barometer is something just like all the rest that we do at Speed. So it's let's say an asset that we give to the community, that we give to the ecosystem, where all of you you can make free use of it, of the Smart Port Barometer here, to get an idea of where your maturity is right now. So out of the Smart Port maturity, out of the Smart Port Barometer, what will we be doing? On the one hand, we will be tracking the progress of Smart Port maturity in the different international port areas. Speed is a European funded project, but as you can see, we're going even further. Today we have people from Brazil here. We've already had webinars with people from Singapore and other places as well. So I think by now we've already had people from 4 continents at least in some of our webinars, and that's what we will also try to be doing. And there we're also counting on the community. So we're giving it to the community, and hopefully there's some, you can help you a little bit. Because with the Smart Port Barometer, we will be publishing a report on it in September 30th. By September 30th, or that's at least the date that we're aiming at right now, depending on how smooth the distribution goes, of course. And we will be measuring, of course, the maturity that you have in these 5 different domains that Yasin just showed. We'll also be going really in depth on the capability side. So what are specific capabilities for innovation, for collaboration, and so on, that your port has or needs to develop. And as Karel also asked, we will be based on this tool. There will also be a possibility to benchmark your progress, to benchmark your current maturity. We'll also be looking at your ambitions, and we'll be benchmarking those. And will not be this benchmark will not just be at, let's say, these very rough port area levels, because of course our scope is on the one hand towards the port communities and how mature is one port community, but we'll also be refining those insights based on the actor level. So we have developed a taxonomy of more than 10 different stakeholder types, meaning that also if you are a terminal operator, or you're a port authority, or you're a deep sea carrier, you'll be getting different types of questions, and we'll be relating to different types of systems and seeing, what kind of data are you integrating into these systems to assess your smart port maturity. And we'll also be sharing those results at that level. And we don't just look at what is the maturity at these different port areas on the 5 dimensions, but also what are the ambitions, what are the differences in ambitions and maturity for different types of smart port stakeholders. And there'll be some other conclusions that we'll be able to make there. Also, if you participate, and that's something that we foresee by October of this year. Oh, I see that my screen sharing has stopped. Sorry for that. A second thing that we'll be providing is also at these benchmarks. So if you participate to the Smart Port Barometer, by October, we will also be sending your personalized, personalized, it's not at your individual level. It's not about, we're not looking for personally identifiable data, because GDPR makes that just very hard, and probably it's not even relevant for this topic. But really, we'll be personalizing it at your company level and your port community level. That we will be feeding back your current maturity. So how do you compare to other port authorities? How do you compare to other terminal operators? How does your community compare to other communities in Europe and around the world? So those are our ambitions with the Smart Port Barometer, and today is, let's say, the official launch to some extent with the webinar, and now we will kick off a communication campaign to spread it further. So what are things that you can do to, well, receive the report, of course, and also to receive your personalized benchmark? On the one hand, the first action is, of course, you can all participate and then by October get your organization's benchmark. So we've added the link here, and we will be sharing the slides with all of you, with all 51 people who actually subscribe to the event. And we're also open to partners. So we already have a good list of partners, intermediaries, let's say, within Belgium, Netherlands, France, and the UK. But we're always open to more organizations to partner with. So if you see some other potential that we provide some content for an event that you're organizing or whatever, we're open to discuss this. And in return, if you could then help us distribute the Smart Port Barometer, this survey broadly within your port area, within your network, and would be very much obliged, of course. So that's a second action that can be taken. In the meanwhile, I see that there are some comments and questions that have come in. So before we go to the closing slide, we could focus on those. So from Sharon, we have here, have ports needed an external agency, neutral researchers to manage this type of assessment? Perhaps we can open this up to the floor. And Karel, have you used any neutral agency? I think we can say there, and Moerdijk, of course, as we've been working together, and we'll probably be working together a bit more, but can you already comment on it? And also other people from the audience, of course, feel free to do so.
Yeah, if we can call AMS a neutral researcher, I think we can. Then we used the experience of AMS, but apart from that, we did it on our own. And I believe that that's also the best way to go, because if you want to reach out to your port community, then it's the best way to reach out from your position as a port authority, because if you set someone who is not affiliated to the port directly, the story will be less stronger than if you do it on your own. But yeah, definitely, if you can have some help, for example, from AMS, that's a big win.
Thanks for the advertisement there, Karel. Doesn't need to be AMS, of course, but fully agree there. So even if you're being helped by external consultants or academics somehow, make sure that there's internal capability building, because it's a story of change management, and indeed for that sometimes it helps to work with some partners that are experienced at it, but make sure that this should not be a one-shot. This should really lead to a culture of collaboration, towards a culture of innovation in your port community, and that can only be done if you internalize some of this work and learnings. Okay, Julia. So here at the bottom line question. Is there already some idea of the financial results of this approach? We will also put that into the report. So we'll also be asking for your growth over the last 3 years and so on. And we will be doing all sorts of regressions and other analyses to see what is which of these efforts have the most impact on financial and other types of results. And we're scoping it more broadly than just the financials. Of course, we know in a year of COVID and especially in Europe, Brexit, we know that ports and many port actors are being hard hit in terms of both operational capacity and some even financial results, or profitability at least, due to the heavy investments that some have had to make. So we'll also be reporting on environmental results and those kinds of things. Hi, Rick. Thanks for your comment. So your customers want North Sea Port to be a neutral party to represent the digital interests of them, indeed. So port authorities, by essence, should be that neutral agent. Okay, this unless there are any last comments you want to make, yeah. So please feel free to jump in. Then we will start closing the webinar. Oh, so here is a small recap. If you don't want to type in the full URL and already want to go to the questionnaire, you can pick up your smartphone and just point it at this QR code, and this will take you already to the Smart Port Barometer. But then again, of course, we do recommend to not fill it in on your smartphone, because it's something that we'll use for benchmarking. And to be able to do that, we are putting quite some, there are quite some questions in it, but also there's adaptive logic behind it and so on. So it's a sophisticated questionnaire, and we recommend that you fill it in when you have the time, and also on, let's say, a more regular laptop or desktop machine. So what can you expect? A small recap on that. So it will help guide you in your digital transformation. It will map and benchmark your current maturity levels in terms of at the level of your port community, as well as with other actors such as you. And it is a great tool to help align the port community on the innovation and the smart port agenda. And I see that we've now reached exactly 6 o'clock. So unless there are any last comments, I would like to thank all of you. Thank especially Karel for sharing your story, and of course also Rick, because you've let Karel take in all of the credits now, but you were definitely a big part in this entire trajectory. So thank you both for being so willing to share your story here. And thank you to the audience also, of course, for your great questions and sticking with us here. It's this, for some people, I guess from Brazil, ungodly hour. So have a nice evening, or in Brazil, it will now be, let's say, have a nice day still. And hope to see you soon. And of course, get in touch with us if you'd like to partner or hear some more about the Smart Port Barometer. So we stop it here. Thank you all. And see you soon.
Bye.